Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Vision driven by Auto Body News. As always, I'm your host, Cole Strandberg. Today's guest is Paul Williams, president of Brightpoint Auto Body, a family office-backed collision repair holding company with 3 brands and 5 locations at the time of this recording. Paul's story is a fun one, and we'll talk all about what Brightpoint's up to, as well as some exciting topics like family business, working for and selling to a large consolidator, and partnering with a family office to scale in a big way. Enjoy the show. Paul Williams, thank you for joining us here on the Collision Vision podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Cole.
Looking forward to a great conversation. I think we're going to cover a lot of really good stuff. But before we dive in, I gave the audience a little bit about your background at the top of the show. Would love to hear it in your own words.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've had a pretty fun, pretty eventful career this far. I stumbled into this business. I say stumbled by meeting my wife and then her father-in-law. Her father, my father-in-law, getting with me at dinner one night and having me join the family business, right? It was fun. It's exciting. It was a little bit nerve-wracking at the time, right? Because this is my girlfriend. So, I'll get to the background of that. So I started out in the automotive business, working for a very large dealer group as a service advisor, back in it's been 2004. Really enjoyed that. And then just kind of worked my way through the dealership ranks, from service to a service manager, service director, parts and service. And then I moved over into the sales side of it to do finance, was a finance manager, and then moved into a sales manager role. And then that's where I met my wife. And she actually worked in service. And her dad owned the collision center in Henderson, Nevada. That was the certified Mercedes-Benz collision repair shop. Her and I were dating for a few months, and we're at dinner one night, a couple drinks, and next thing you know, I'm going to work for my wife's father. So that's kind of how it all kind of took place and shaped right there at Elephant Bar in Green Valley.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So, and here we are now, right? Since that was back in 2014. And, it was nerve-wracking, but it's been really, really good, and obviously grateful to him for the opportunity and, his mentorship throughout the years. So that's been good.
Fantastic. So kind of opportunistically went ahead and joined the family business, maybe even before it was legally family. Walk me through that decision. Certainly some personal components came into place there, but also some professional ones.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone knows my father-in-law, he is a go-getter, very, very down to earth, just get things done. Right. And the number one concern is if your daughter leaves me, what happens to my job? Do I still have a job? And, it was business and personal were completely separate, which was good. And, that was reassuring. But it was good. He started out as a tech and then shop owner. So he was in the business for a very long time. He started out with the one shop in Henderson, Nevada. I came along, we got together, we partnered, and just grew the business and blew it up over, 4 years, in the Las Vegas market. For us, what was very, very, successful was he was early on in the, certified, certifications for collision way before anybody really thought about him, which is what kind of just really took us off there in the beginning. So really, really good that way. The family business, it was great. We had a lot of fun, and we grew pretty rapid, through those 4 years. It was a lot of fun though.
Fantastic. So you end up selling the family business. Walk me through that decision. And I harp on the family business component a little bit today because I love talking about it. I went through the same experience, came from the same place.
Yeah, what they say, right? Timing is everything. And we were doing really, really well. We were at a peak and just doing phenomenal. And when you come along to selling, everybody thinks it's the right time. And we pushed through. Obviously, you have some consolidators knocking on the door, right? That's always been the case. Is you got 2, 3, 4 consolidators, and this was before the private equity money really took place and took fold in the collision industry.
Sure.
So you had your typical top 3 consolidators, large MSOs that were knocking on the door, and we felt it was the time was right, and made that decision. I don't want to say it was an easy decision, because nothing's ever easy, right, in this world, but we went ahead and made that decision and made the transition. So we felt we picked the right partner for the employees and the business, and it was good. It's always a tough decision. You could probably look back in hindsight and wonder if it was really, were we too early, or really should we have held on? And I guess you can do that with life and any decision you make, right? There's always that question. So
sure,
but it was good.
Awesome. Well, and proof's kind of in the pudding there. You ended up staying on with that acquirer for some time. I want to hear about that. And then additionally, did your father-in-law as well, or was that his move into retirement there?
Yeah, that was his move into a short stint retirement. So, which is good for him, because he can't stop moving, and he's a business junkie, right? Like, sure. He just loves doing business. So can't blame him, can't fault him, right? He's still pretty young and enjoys his day-to-day life, and he loves business. So, it was good for him.
Awesome. Very good. Now talk to me about your decision to stay on with the acquirer, and you certainly moved up through the ranks. If we could touch on kind of your experience there for a short time, that'd be great. Yeah.
So when we sold, it was really, really important to maintain the people, right? And when we sold the business, I stayed on as, at the time, what they call as a market manager, overseeing, I think at the time it was 7 locations, the ones that we currently had, and then obviously they had some legacy stores. I stayed on to maintain the business, the model, and obviously we didn't want to upset the apple cart and employees question what's happening, right? So I stayed on with them for, gosh, it was about 4.5 years is how long I stayed. And moving through the ranks of a large MSO, there's a lot of really good operators within the organization, and everybody wants to move up, right? That's the goal. They want to do better for themselves, they want to do better for families. I actually was lucky enough to have a mentor who I still talk to this day, who just retired from there. But he was a huge part of my success within the organization, and just honestly learned a ton of things, right? Like, there's a lot of things that these large MSOs do really, really well, because they've been doing it. They've scaled so large. They've learned over the years what works and what doesn't work, and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So learned a lot of those items and a lot of those things as far as how, acquisitions go, and growth, and, laying out that platform and foundation early on, before you get into it and realize that you don't have a foundation, right? So it was good. And I moved into a, interim regional vice president role to take over the Pacific Northwest market. So we did that, helped turn that market around and make it successessful. And then obviously I moved to the South Central market, which was Texas. They said, hey, we have a position coming open. It's going to be posted. We'd like you to apply for it. So I did. And I moved my family to Texas from Las Vegas. So it was good. And just, had a lot of fun within the group. And, I wouldn't change it, because I did learn, honestly, I learned a ton from that. So it was really good, though.
Awesome, man. I love your story. And I think a cool component is, and I'd echo this from my own experience, going from that family business and getting to experience how that kind of small, intimate type of business operates to the larger sort of financially sophisticated organization operates, you get to see kind of the best of both worlds and realize, hey, maybe sometimes the best way to do this might be right in the middle, taking some of both. And leads me to kind of what I want to get into next and talk about your experience now at Brightpoint. How did that involvement happen? Tell me about what you're doing today.
Yeah, over the last 2 years, I had a couple opportunities to go work for some private equity. Currently, a current group that's growing in the Pacific Northwest. I worked with the CEO, and I was going to go join them early on. Just a phenomenal guy, phenomenal operator, and I ended up deciding not to do that. Just kind of thought about it, made sure it was the right decision, and the timing wasn't right. And so I stayed on, continued the day-to-day operations with the regional MSO that I was with then. And I got a call from a recruiter. It said, not even a call, it was a LinkedIn, right? Just said, hey, got a family office capital group looking for a president. Are you interested? And, I'm always open to talk and listen. I was very, curious to who that was. And so anyway, I jumped on a call with them and met the Southworth Capital group. That was the family. It was Jeff Presley, his son Clay, and a couple of their operators within the organization. And honestly, I'm not going to lie. I mean, the first interview I did, I got off the phone with them and I called my wife and said, I really hope these guys call me back. Like, it was within that 2 hours, you knew, that first impression, first instinct, it was, we could work really, really well together, and this would be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Now, kind of high level from your perspective, how does a family office like yours view a collision repair holding maybe differently than private equity would? And why were you attracted to that over maybe, again, traditional private equity?
Yeah. So, with Brightpoint, we are a house of brands. Right. So when we do an acquisition, we keep the name of the business, right? We're purchasing a good business with good people and a legacy. And so we want to continue that. We don't want to come in, flip everything upside down and change the whole business model and then, have to kind of rebuild with some of the employees and staffing with some departure, right? We want to come in, we want to add value from what we do. And that's really what's important for us. What's different for us is we are this model, and I'm sure as you've seen, car values have increased substantially. The length of loans, car loans, are now in the 84 months. And that's more common than it was, 4 or 5 years ago when it was really a 66-month loan was your longest, or 72. So with the price of cars, they've extended, that term of how long they're going to keep their cars, right? Not only that, but with the electronics and everything else that's happening and the way they're building cars, they're lasting much longer than they did, 10, 15 years ago. So, we feel that with that is people are going to have their cars a lot longer, which means they're going to maintain them. They're going to take care of them, more frequently and much better than they did in the past. With our group, this is a long-term play for us. This is not, your typical 3 years, 3 years, 1 day, 5 years, come in and then recap, with a new private equity group to sell and continue to build and grow. This is a long-term hold. We plan to hold this for a very long time and continue the model as a family business and just keep that process, really. I mean, that's really the big difference between the two of us. In our investments, we have a lot more patience and time for those investments rather than these, quicker turns on capital.
Absolutely. No, it makes total sense. And the holding period, frankly, is something that many people are a bit weary of when talking about private equity. And with family offices, oftentimes these are evergreen investments and not limited by holding period time. So that's fantastic. And you mentioned the house of brands as well. I imagine when you're looking for acquisitions, that's something you kind of highlight as a differentiation between some of the more traditional consolidators. What kinds of businesses are you guys looking for in acquisitions? And is there a focus geographically as well?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We're not going to get into a market and compete with a regional MSO. They're putting 6 to 7 locations in one metro city, right? Is not something we're going to do, and we're not going to grow that fast to be able to do that in a lot of different cities, right? For us, it's getting in and it's acquiring a great business with a good operator. Whether the owner wants to stay on, take some chips off the table and continue to grow with us and partner with us, or if the seller wants to, stay on for a short period of time through transition and then obviously exit the business with a succession plan of a general manager that's already in place.
Absolutely.
And so for us, we're pretty strategic on that, on how we're going to do that. We're pretty much, if you look at us now, we're kind of a little bit all over the board, but we do have quite a bit happening where we're trying to centralize some markets with good stores and good operators. Our biggest thing is if we're buying a good operation with a good manager, good operator, we let them manage. We let them manage that business and let them do what they need to do, which is take care of customers, right? And go back to the basics, fixing cars right and taking care of customers. Everything else seems to fall in place when you kind of take out all that trivial mini stuff off their plates. The stuff that they can't control half the time anyway, right? So, which has been pretty helpful for us.
Absolutely. No, makes total sense. And I guess zooming out a little bit, set the stage for us. Where is Brightpoint today is kind of part one of the question, and I'll follow up that with part two.
Yeah. So Brightpoint today, currently we have 5 locations as we speak. We have, right now, currently we'll probably have about 10 under LOI. So we do have some pretty good growth here in the first year, but also we don't want to grow too fast to where we can't be of assistance to the shops that we're integrating, right? You only get to integrate one time. And if you don't do it right the first time, you're done. So we want to be very careful about how we do those things. And we want to make sure that the team feels welcome, right? That's the biggest thing. We don't want to go in for a day and, hey, you're part of our team and thank you very much. See you later. We want to make sure they understand why we're there and what values we have to offer to make sure that they feel comfortable with us and that we're not going to change their business. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody likes change. And when you go into a business, people have that unknown. What's going to happen? What are they going to do? What's going to happen to me, right? That's their biggest thing. Am I going to make money? Is my job going to change? How's it going to affect my family? And those are all big things that we touch on, for a few hours doing the integration. We talk about those things. And I'll tell you one thing. I will never tell them something that's not true. We'll make sure we touch it and we don't deviate from what we say, which is really, really important, which is what's really helped us with our reputation and my reputation.
Absolutely.
We're not going to steer them the wrong way. So
that's great. And part two of that question, what are the goals for Brightpoint? Where do you envision the organization is 3, 5, 7 years out?
Yeah, I mean, within 3 years, we hope to have 30 plus locations, if not more than that, depending on, good acquisitions and some really good opportunity that's out there. But that's where we feel we'll probably be within a couple of years, probably 30 within 2 and, heck, maybe 50 by the time we get to the 5-year mark, which will be fun.
That's great. Fantastic growth to this point. Certainly some aggressive growth projected moving forward. How, in your mind, are you guys able to do that from a internal structure perspective, from a foundation perspective? Is that all within the Brightpoint organization, or is Southworth kind of some shared services helping out in that growth as well from an integration perspective?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, one of the biggest things that was, other than the being a family office and really being a true family owned and operated business, right? That's one of the biggest the biggest differences between us and anybody else is we're a true family owned and operated business. We have at Southworth, they have a back office called Centerline Services, right, which is your business services. And let me tell you, they have over 60 employees from HR to accounting. We have in-house legal. We have a full BI team that takes care of all of those things. So when you talk about integration, we have a full team that comes in and helps with that transition, right, from the Centerline Services team. They'll come in, we'll make sure we get, vendors switched over, right? This comes off the shop's plate. AP, any HR, things like that, we all handle from the centerline side, which is just a phenomenal service. That one of the biggest reasons, made sense, right, for a foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about an advantage toward being just immensely scalable pretty quickly is having that foundation built out within the greater Southworth organization. That's fantastic. Speaking of Southworth, before moving on, from your perspective, these guys started their own platform. From what I understand, they didn't go out and buy one big group and decide to go on that. They really purposefully targeted the collision repair industry. They weren't particularly just opportunistic. They obviously had a real thesis toward why they wanted to be in this industry. Why do you think they're so excited about collision repair?
Yeah, it goes back to the thesis just back a few minutes ago on the length of vehicle loans, right? The sophistication and the technology of the cars and how long they're going to keep them. Those things. I mean, people keep their vehicles now for much longer than they did before, right? And they are going to maintain them. And now with some of the generations, I mean, they are very prideful on their cars, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times when I was in the shop that, Mrs. Jones named her car Betty, right? Like that was her car. Like, and she saved up for it. It was her dream to have that, Honda Accord or that Hyundai Sonata, or whether it was Mercedes Benz. It doesn't matter. These people, they save up, for these things and they treasure them, right? Sure. So they're going to take care of them, and things have changed, right, with longevity and length, but really that's the thesis behind that. And the business is it's a good business.
Absolutely. No, I'd echo that as well. And a theme here on the Collision Vision is constantly the fact that nobody's collision repair in general is so bullish right now. And it seems like it's becoming more and more acknowledged to be an evergreen industry and gets a lot of long-term holders looking at this as a space to really go crazy in. We talk a lot also about scaling an operation here on the Collision Vision. So much of that has to do with the leader kind of leading the charge. What do you feel has made you an effective leader, allowing you to scale multiple organizations effectively over your career?
Yeah, I would have to say, a lot of my success has been from the team, right? In any team, it's not just one player that has elevated, that team. It's the buy-in from everybody, right? And I've been blessed. I've been lucky. What do you want to call it? Blessed, lucky. You could look at a couple different ways, right? But I think it's a lot of the successes come from just being true to your word, right? Like being honest with your team, motivating them, leading them, getting them to do things that they don't believe they can do, right? And that's really what it's about. And just showing them the way. A lot of times these days is you're getting a lot of leaders who think that they know, and they're being a leader from the back rather than being from the front. And that's something I've done for a long time, and I believe that's been a lot of the success. And how you conduct yourself with your integrity and the way you treat people is pretty much how you get everybody else to buy in and believe in what you're doing.
Absolutely. No, well put, man. As you know, we like to start wrapping up each episode of the Collision Vision with 3 key takeaways. What would you say those are from our conversation today?
Yeah, in this business, I think, and with people, we're really, it's you call it the body shop business or the collision business, but in actuality, we're in the people business every single day. We're dealing with people, and I would say just, treat everybody with respect and do what you say. That's probably one of the big key takeaways for me that I live on every day. Again, lead your team from the front, show them the way, right? Be a good example. Those are probably the key takeaways for me, in this business. And that's kind of where I sit with it.
Beautiful, man. No, really have enjoyed our conversation so far today. Where can people follow along with A, you, and B, Brightpoint? Yeah,
you can. I mean, we have the Brightpoint website. You can follow along there as we do our acquisitions you could always follow us on LinkedIn. And then I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well, just making sure, communicating, sharing, where we're at in our growth. So those are probably the key places for us to continue to see where we're at and how we grow.
Beautiful. And I'll be sure to link those in the show notes, so make that easy for our listeners. But Paul Williams, an incredible story, really fun conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the Collision Vision.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. Appreciate your time, man.
Thanks again to Paul Williams of Brightpoint Auto Body for joining us on today's episode. What a fun conversation that covered a ton of different topics. Before we wrap up today's show, I wanted to reiterate Paul's key takeaways, and those were: we're in the people business. That's an important one to never forget. Treat everyone with respect and do what you say you're going to do. Also, lead your team from the front and show them the way. Paul values team building and reputation immensely, and for good reason. There aren't too many things more important than that when trying to build and scale in the collision repair ecosystem that I often describe as a big industry, but a small world. That's all for today's show. Please be sure to follow and share the Collision Vision wherever you enjoy your podcast. And as always, on behalf of the Auto Body News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.